Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
5:07 on this Thursday morning. It's Washington, D.C., your nation's capital, and it's O'Connor and Company. This 12th day of June, a couple of days away from the big military parade celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States Army on Saturday. We got news about the buildup for that event. Plus, we had a triumphant night at the ballpark last night for Republicans trouncing Democrats in the annual Congressional baseball game. A glamorous night at the Kennedy Center, opening of Les Miserables. And we seem to have some trouble over in the Middle East. Some would say even it appears that war clouds are forming over Iran as some troubling developments in that area. We're going to try to get to all of those stories and a whole lot more over the next 4 hours. At 6:35, we'll have a conversation with Mike Van Meter, who'd like to represent the 11th Congressional District in Congress in that special election that's coming up. 7:05, we'll check in with James Rosen, who, of course, covers the White House for Newsmax, but he's also somewhat of an aficionado on classic rock. The sad passing of a real legend, a genius, Brian Wilson. At 8:05, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, by the way. Just want to make sure there's a lot of Brian Wilsons out there. Our Brian Wilson's still alive and kicking. I checked in with him. He still gets around. 8:05, KT McFarland. And at 8:35, David Wild is a music critic and will give us his perspective on Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Are you a Beach Boys or a Beatles type there, Cassie Smedile?
Oh, we were a Beach Boys house.
Yeah.
I was always playing, yes.
We were both. We were very ecumenical in our house. We played both sides of the fence. And by the way, so were they. The Beatles listened to the Beach Boys all the time, and the Beach Boys listened to the Beatles all the time. And I don't understand why people had to choose. But it's a funny thing about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys and the sound that he created. It's so transcendent. Like my kids listen to it, maybe because they listened to it in the car growing up.
Right.
But they'll deliberately choose it. It's like, oh, I'm in the mood for the Beach Boys, and sometimes you're just in that you want that sound and how it makes you feel.
Oh, that's completely right. Well, and of course with your California ties, because that was the same thing. My dad always had it on. That's just what I thought played on the radio. That and talk radio. That's all I thought existed.
That's right.
And all I wanted.
Sounds like your dad's a lot like my dad and me.
I wanted to be a blonde California girl or a Midwest farmer's daughter. I was a Midwest girl, but not a farmer's daughter.
I want to talk about the baseball game last night, too. I was there, and it was great. But real fast on the Beach Boys. I mean, you're right. Being from Southern California, it was a natural. It's like you play the music on the weekends. You got radio stations that are dedicated to surfer music and music of that era. But the whole point is everyone around the world wanted to be in California. So you would listen to it, in the freezing cold of Buffalo in the middle of winter. It's like, let's hear the good vibrations, right? And then when you go to California, it's like, it's never really like this. It was this magical little thing that he created that didn't really exist, but it doesn't matter. That's what music does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it actually got me thinking of it in relation to the images coming out of California and L.A. this week.
Yeah.
I thought, that's funny. That's not what I grew up thinking California was like, as all of these conversations about the Beach Boys were happening. You're exactly right. It shaped generations' visuals of California, the coolest place on earth.
I talk to friends of mine who intellectually know that California is so broken right now. Mm-hmm. The government has broken it. California is a beautiful place. There's no denying it, but it is so difficult to live there. Because of the government, because of the dysfunction. And you say, why do you stay here? And they go back to that. Oh, it's warm and the palm trees and the beach. It's like, dude, that doesn't exist anymore.
It's
like,
song.
If you look up, you see a palm tree framed against the sky. But then if you follow down to the trunk of the palm tree, there's a criminal, vagrant, drug addict, living in a tent right underneath it, urinating on the street. So
it still costs you $1 million to live next to that guy.
Anyway, more to reflect on with the passing of Brian Wilson. And what better legacy for a musician and a musical genius to know that we will talk about him and play his music and still go to that happy place. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted everyone to go to a happy place. And even his sad songs make you feel good, which is weird. Anyway, last night at Nationals Park, the Republicans fifth year in a row. They are on a roll. And they don't just beat the Democrats, they trounce the Democrats. The best the Democrats had was the first inning, where they loaded the bases against pitcher Greg Stubbe, of course, congressman from Florida. But then an amazing, athletic, diving stab at third base. And then not only did he grab the ball, who was the congressman?
August Pfluger.
Pfluger, yeah. August Pfluger from Texas. He like a diving stab of what should have been a shot right down the third base line. He dives back, stabs the ball, keeps it from going to the outfield, and then has the presence of mind to dive and tag the third base to force the out at third base. And they got out of the inning, and then it was sort of, for a couple of innings, it was tight. It was like 1-0. Mm-hmm. But then they just blew it open. Blew it open.
Was it 31 to 11?
It ended up being 13-2.
13-2. Oh, I saw something crazy. But
we wanted a big, beautiful shutout, but we didn't. The Democrats did put 2 runs on the board. The final score was 13-2, and Joni Ernst came in as a pinch runner, first woman playing in the game, and she came around and scored too. She's good. Joni Ernst gets very pumped up about this game every year.
Good for her. I know she's very dedicated to it. These members, they go and they practice every morning for several months leading up to a game. They take it very seriously. I worked for a member of Congress who was on the team. They don't get to play if they don't show up to practice. It's a whole thing they're very committed to. I have to give a shout out because I know you're a Navy man, but my brother went to the Air Force Academy, and Congressman Pfluger was his classmate there. So there is some athleticism in the Air Force. So I think we have to give them a shout out when possible. Well,
and listen, speaking of that, the pitcher for the Democrats, I'll have to get his name. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. It was a very chaotic and hectic evening, what with the hot dogs and beer and everything. We were in the special suite with our friends at Hillsdale College. They have a huge presence there at the game. And, of course, we're great friends with Hillsdale College, and we were enjoying it there up in the suite, which meant a lot. We were schmoozing a little bit, too. That's part of the deal. It's like, really, it's like, shouldn't we watch the game? Well, it's not really baseball, is it? I mean, we'll watch.
You hear some noise in the background, you cheer. Exactly. But that's a late night for you, Larry. This is what you do for the listeners.
Well, thankfully, it was only 6 innings because it's not a full game. They only play 6 innings for charity. But the pitcher for the Democrats was wearing, you mentioned the Naval Academy, he was actually wearing a Naval Academy baseball uniform. The Skull and Crossbones, Fear the Bones, which was their uniform all year this year, inspired by the football team's specialty uniform that they wore in the Army-Navy game. And that looked really cool. And I was like, I guess maybe he was from Maryland, or maybe he is a Naval Academy graduate and he's a congressman. Yeah. The Republicans now wear uniforms where they're all wearing the red shirt with the little, USA across the front with their names and numbers. The Democrats still wear the way it used to be, where you would wear a special uniform from your district, right? I remember Ron Paul used to play, Congressman Ron Paul, Rand Paul's dad, and he would always wear a Houston Astros jersey.
Well, and some of them would get real local. They'd do their, local AAA team, or which is kind of neat. But when you look out over the field, I think it looks better when they're all in the same uniform.
The Republicans were all in red and wearing MAGA hats. That had to drive the Democrats nuts.
Talk about trolling. Yeah.
Didn't drive them nuts enough to make contact with the ball much, though, as the Republican. And it was very, and by the way, they raised close to $3 million for charity, which is the point of this. It has really gotten big. I mean, it's the sponsors there, the people there. It was fun. And there I am. I'm standing in line trying to get in, because everyone leaves Capitol Hill all at the same time. This is all staffers and people who work on Capitol Hill. And I'm in line, and I look behind, because you're looking around in the crowd, right, seeing if you recognize anyone you know. And I did recognize someone right behind me, Jamie Raskin.
Oh.
Yeah.
How was that? Did you talk to him?
No.
No.
No, I had
just
nothing to
wanted
say.
to leave him be. Celebrities, they get bothered all the time. Remember
that wasn't the reason I didn't talk to him. I didn't want a scene. What do you say? Hey, Congressman, keep up the good work, you anti-American scum.
No, I guess that would ruin the nonpartisan or bipartisan spirit.
It's baseball, so you just suck it up and not say anything. I didn't say anything.
Well, that was big of you.
I didn't need to create a scene.
If the tables had been turned, I don't know that you would have been so lucky, Larry. You know, Democrats, they want to fight these days.
Oh, yeah.
But
actually, here's the upside. Republicans win. No riots. Nothing got burned. No cars overturned. Nobody got shot during practice, which is always a, upside because, the left, they try to, you mentioned the practice all the time. Mm-hmm. We remember what happened at practice about 6 years ago.
Yeah, I did see Molly Hemingway. She noted that somebody said the 5-year winning streak for Republicans, and she said, and a 7-year streak that we haven't had any Republicans get shot at shot.
Always a good thing.
Yeah.
It's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
I mean, the harmonies, the theme of the music, it's always about California and the beach, although not always. As the music matured, as they got older and the music got older and the technology got better and their use of the studio got better, the themes changed a bit. It was always about relationships, though, or good times, or remembering good times and the bad times and that sort of thing. The Beach Boys, like we said, it's really... a real musician, a real composer wants to do more than just entertain or give you a tune. They want to touch your emotions, and I think the Beach Boys did that better than any of their peers.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about it's good vibrations and feeling good and the cool California life, and yet it is the music that generations now turn to when they do need a pick me up. There actually is some heft to it, despite it. Just sounding all light and stuff. It is the song that the music that so many turn to. Yeah. And you guys, we were just reminiscing before the show started about seeing them and how that's a core memory if you've seen the Beach Boys.
Tour. They still tour. I mean, Brian Wilson had not been touring with the Beach Boys. They sort of had a split, but it got ugly. There were lawsuits, but they were still family. Mike Love still tours with the Beach Boys brand. They were cousins, Mike Love and Brian Wilson. And Mike Love, also kind of a MAGA guy. He came to a lot of Republican and conservative events. He's definitely a man of his era, and so they were around here a lot. Our own Rick Fowler, who everybody of course knows, part of the WMAL family, he was their tour manager for a while there, if I remember right.
Oh wow. Well, and of course,
or promoter, I want to say. I'm sorry.
Either way, a pretty good gig.
Right.
And they played a lot of the Capitol.
See if we can get Rick on the
Fourth.
show a little later.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we should reach out to Rick Fowler and see if he can do a quick hit with us a little later. Sorry, go ahead.
No, they would play at the Capitol Fourth.
Oh, yes.
Seen them a few times there.
Legendary on the mall.
Guys. Yeah.
Yes. Here's a good example. Here's a cut 8 here. So this is that juxtaposition of, here's a love song, but the lyrics are sort of, bitter almost. And, just take a listen. I mean, it's so beautiful, and the lilting vocals there from his brother, from that was Dennis, right? No, Dennis was the drummer. Sorry, Carl was did most of the vocals there. Brian did a lot of them at the beginning, and then he stopped singing really. Most of those things, but they did. And Carl's voice was a little bit more pure. Dennis was the drummer. Dennis and Carl have already died. Brian outlived them, which is shocking considering the health issues that he had, and the drug problems that have been well chronicled at this point. But I don't know. It's just we're going to listen to a little bit of Beach Boys all morning long, just because it's
as we should. It's good vibrations.
It is, and it's one of those things when there's the passing of a legend like that. It's impossible not to make it a part of your conversation, and that's what we do here. It's 5:23.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:35 on this Thursday morning in your nation's capital, Washington, the District of Columbia. Coming up at 6:35, Mike Van Meter is running for that special election in Virginia's 11th Congressional District. At 7:05, James Rosen from Newsmax talk about the White House, the president, and to reflect on the passing of Brian Wilson. 8:05, KT McFarland will join us, and then at 8:35, David Wild, music critic, will talk to him about Brian Wilson as well. I want to keep saying Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. You say we're going to talk to James Rosen about the passing of Brian Wilson. our friend of the radio station here, my former radio partner, named Brian Wilson, worked with James Rosen at Fox News. Different Brian Wilson. I feel compelled if anyone's like waking up and weren't plugged into the news about the Beach Boys. I just want to make sure that it's like, oh my God, Brian Wilson. No, Brian Wilson's fine.
That's good of you this is a good PSA for you.
I think it's important. Brian used to always say, it's like, oh, are you Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys? And he would say, no, but I do get around. That was his. And he did, by the way. Some disconcerting developments in the Middle East right now having to do with a potential showdown between Israel and Iran, maybe between the United States and Iran, maybe both. Yesterday, the president, on his way to Les Miserables at the Kennedy Center opening night, was asked by a reporter for an update because U.S. personnel are now being moved out of the region, which is an indication that something might be looming. Here's the president responding.
Could you provide an update on Iran? We're hearing reports that U.S. personnel are being moved out of the region within striking distance.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. But they are being. We've given notice to move out, and we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that can be done to dial the temperature down in the region?
They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We're not going to allow that.
There you go. So what's going on here, Cassie? By the way, of course, we'll have KT McFarland at 8 o'clock about this. But here's what happened yesterday. We had an announcement from the IAEA. That's the international agency that does inspections on nuclear weapons or nuclear development. And, of course, we know that Iran has been fast-tracking their development of enriched uranium to deploy as a nuclear weapon. There's no doubt about that. There's no reason why Iran needs nuclear power. They're sitting on one of the largest oil reserves on the planet, and I don't think they care about green energy or anything like that. This is about a weapon. And the IAEA, for the first time in about 20 years, declared that Tehran was in breach of its non-proliferation obligations. Quoting IAEA, the board finds that Iran's many failures to uphold its obligations since 2019 to provide the agency with full and timely cooperation regarding undeclared nuclear material and activities at multiple undeclared locations in Iran constitute noncompliance with its obligations. That's all a bunch of NGO gobbledygook to mean they're in violation of every type of nuclear agreement. This is something that observers have been seeing for a while. We know they want to develop a weapon. Now, there will be some people that say, well, why shouldn't Iran be able to have a weapon? Okay, you can have that position, but there's a lot of answers why not, and mostly because they're a murderous regime that has not paused in any way for the last several decades to try to kill Americans and kill Israelis, our allies there, at any opportunity. They fund terrorists everywhere, and they have been pretty clear about the fact that they want to wipe us off the map.
Did you see this video from Tulsi Gabbard that she put out yesterday? This very ominous video that warns that we're closer to a nuclear holocaust than that it's making it sound imminent. And people are saying, what's that all about? We need to know a little bit more about that. Now, I trust that the president and his team are doing everything they can to mitigate that. We've seen what happens when you have the Obama and then the Biden administration try and play nice with Iran, sending them pallets of cash. That hasn't proven to set them on the right course.
Quite the opposite.
Right. So we can't negotiate with terrorists, and they are a terrorist regime. But it is very concerning. You hear all these things. I'm certainly another reason that I'm glad President Trump's in the White House and we're not dealing with Obama or Biden and the Democrats.
Also, late last night, Israel, the Israeli Navy attacked docks in Yemen. Now, this is a portion of Yemen that's held by rebels, as they call them. I love the way the AP uses their style book. Rebels, they're terrorists. They're anarchist terrorists and radical Islamists in Yemen, and they hold a port city. Hodeidah is the city, and they launched a seaborne assault against the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. Let's just be clear here. Houthis, these are the people who have been shooting drones and missiles and rockets at Navy ships since the October 7th attacks. Oh, speaking of the October 7th attacks, Hamas So you got your Houthis, you got your Hamas, and then, of course, Hezbollah. All three of those terrorist organizations are financed, funded, backed, and basically coordinated through the regime in Tehran. Iran is a state sponsor of terror. They have been since their birthday. The current government in Iran was born out of terrorism, and they've continued to utilize terrorism as their main weapon, their main tool to build their influence around the Middle East and to dominate that region and to kill as many people as they can. Israel's Navy actually conducted this operation against this terrorist port in Yemen. That is seen as a provocation against Iran specifically. And for everyone to say, oh, Israel shouldn't have done that because that's going to provoke Iran. Oh, really? So hold on. A terror group that's stationed in Yemen, Israel goes after them because they've been killing Israelis, for the last several years. Mm-hmm. And you're admitting that's a direct attack on Iran. Therefore, you're admitting that Iran is sponsoring these terrorists. And we're doing nothing about that. And, well, things are reaching ahead.
Right. That Israel should be allowed to defend itself.
Of course. Israel's military put out a statement, by the way. The strikes are carried out to stop the use of the port for military purposes. The port is used to transfer weapons, and it's an example of the Houthi terrorist regime's cynical exploitation of civilian infrastructure in order to advance terrorist activities. Yemen is under the control of the Houthis at this point and work hand in glove with the Houthis, and they are the allies of Iran. And, well, things are getting heated. Things are developing, and the fact that the U.S. personnel have been moved out of the region is a key indication that something is imminent. As I said, Katie McFarland, national security expert, she'll join us to discuss this at 8:05. Right now it's 5:43.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Well, there will be a historic vote in the House of Representatives today. Republicans riding high off of their enormous defeat over the Democrats last night at the annual Congressional baseball game. They'll now keep their winning ways going with a vote to do something that Republicans have been wanting to do for decades. It looks like it's finally about to happen. The defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This is part of the rescission package that President Trump sent to the House, sent to both chambers of Congress 10 days ago. They fast-tracked this portion of it, $9.4 billion in spending cuts. And one of the big hurdles that had to pass yesterday was the rules. You vote on the rule first in the House, and then the next day you actually do the vote, right? So, and usually, if you're going to vote for the rule on the terms of the debate and the vote, that means you're going to vote in favor of the actual bill, right? Is that usually how it goes, Cassie? Yeah,
very rarely do people switch. But,
right.
But yes, you're right. So that opens up the debate to actually get the conversation going on the floor before the vote.
And today will be the vote on the rescission package. And, there was some concern that there were a handful of Republicans in the House, and there's still some concern in the Senate, that are squishy on this issue of defunding PBS, defunding NPR. But they got in line, and they got the vote passed, the rules vote passed yesterday. Our friends at Media Research Center, who have been championing this issue for decades, and even more importantly, chronicling and making record of all of the violations that NPR and PBS have engaged in. Whenever they present an issue that is in any way political or could be controversial or polarizing and has multiple perspectives from Republican and Democrat or whatever political persuasion you may be, they're supposed to be completely nonpartisan and just report the facts, and that's it. And anyone who tunes in to their coverage knows that they've been in violation of that portion of the law tied to their funding really forever.
Forever, right.
So this is it. The House is going to vote now today. I'm reading all of these articles from yesterday. So it is today. That's when it's expected to vote. Do you think they'll have the votes now at this point since they passed the rule?
I do. And, I have to say, this is one of those times, as you know, Larry, I used to work on Capitol Hill, and one of the big gripes was that people weren't using the committee process effectively, that committee hearings were kind of haphazard. And Republicans have really gotten good at them. And I know you've had Congressman Brandon Gill on the show several times. When they brought in the head of NPR in particular and called her out on the tweets, on the hypocrisy of the coverage, on the bias of the coverage, and so many of those clips went viral. I think that's what's really gotten us to this moment where it's undeniable that they have abused the taxpayer dollars that they've been granted. And I do give Congress credit for utilizing their perch to be able to really spotlight this to the American people in a way that puts it right in front of you. Because to your point, everybody's known that about NPR. It's kind of been the joke. Yeah. But that's your money funding that.
That's right.
If people want it, they can go pay for it privately. Go get a Substack like every other washed-up externalist that I know we're going to talk about later.
No, I agree, and I think that the way that they position this, it's so underrated utilizing the committee process and having bills be individualized because they've gotten into this habit, and I think they love it because they can hide behind these giant packages, these giant bills. And if you don't vote for this, then the government's going to go, shut down and go bankrupt, and it's always the same story. And so they got so much garbage that it's stuck in there. And maybe people say, hey, you voted for this. And it's like, yeah, but it was part of this big thing. If I didn't vote for it, the government would have shut down. Now you get everybody on record individually, bill by bill by bill. That's the power of the committee process and the basic regular order process. Right. And by the way, it's good politics because now you actually have to put your name and your vote directly to a specific idea. In this case, should our tax dollars go to pay for this propaganda?
Yeah, absolutely. Regular order. That's a term you don't hear around here that much. I know it's getting into the weeds, but we should applaud it whenever it happens. And I think voters and constituents, we've gotten smarter about how we consume information as well. We have more levers, more outlets to consume it. Of course, tuning in, getting 4 hours of it every single morning helps because you can really learn and break it down and get into the nitty-gritty. But that's also helped to get to this point, too.
Cassie, I can tell you that I feel like even the Democrats know that they've lost this, that this is inevitable, it's going to happen. Because they have two arguments right now. The people at NPR and PBS, they're trying, they're putting up a fight. But their two arguments are, number one, if you kill NPR, that means local coverage in all of these rural areas is going to be defunct and they won't be able to get their local news. Can I show you the good folks at Media Research Center put out a show listing of one of the outlying rural areas. This is in Nevada. The entire day is D.C. and New York national syndicated programming. They will have, usually these local stations will have one show for 1 hour at like 11 in the morning after drive time, just to focus. It's a 1 hour show. And I assure you that there are commercial news and talk radio stations in the same area that's covering local news much better. We've got a local NPR station here in Washington, D.C. We have several of them. They play their national programming here. They don't do a local show like we're doing right now.
Well, and to your point, Larry, having grown up in the Midwest outside of Kansas City, NPR was always thought to be a national radio program, national public radio. You didn't tune into NPR for the local news. That's what your local drive time radio was for.
Thank you. That's right. That's what WMAL is for.
I never thought that was the case for NPR, so losing that argument.
That's their one argument, which is a lie. The only other argument they have is this is an attack on free speech. It's an attack on the First Amendment. Everyone can see through that. I'm sorry, your rights don't require government funding. That's not a right to have the government fund your free speech. Everybody at NPR has the freedom to report whatever they want. You don't have to ask me to pay for it. You mentioned Congressman Brandon Gill, who is a freshman and has been so fantastic. Here he was yesterday.
Mr. Speaker, China has state-sponsored media. North Korea has state-sponsored media. The United States does not need taxpayer-funded propaganda. Mr. Speaker, we have the opportunity this week to rescind $1 billion that is in the pipeline right now for NPR and PBS, two outlets that routinely spew anti-American and anti-Christian propaganda. They sow racial division in this country, and they promote weird, woke values that most Americans find disgusting.
He does have a way of cutting right to the bottom line. And I'll tell you the third reason why I think they know that this is over. You don't hear them saying, you're killing Big Bird, you're killing Elmo. That's gone. They know it doesn't work anymore. So keep your eye on it. Today's the vote, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. 5:54.